Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Popcorn Watchlist podcast, where we discuss and celebrate our favorites in TV and film. I'm your host, Xavier, and today we're actually going to switch it over to TV. Actually, really exciting because we just got through our next topic for this episode. We got through the finale of the season 2 of Loki. A lot of people were really excited about this. I know the rest of my Popcorn Watchlist panelists have been watching it every week. Really excited to figure out what's going to happen next. But without further ado, let me introduce you to the regular usual suspects of the Popcorn Watchlist panel. We got Danny over here.
What's up?
You got Zach.
What's up?
And Anthony.
What's up? Everyone say what's up. I don't know.
He's like, I don't know. Scary Movie was great. Oh, man.
I mean, Halloween was 2 weeks ago, a week ago?
Yeah, it's almost 2 weeks ago.
No, it was last Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay, so like
A week and a half?
10 days ago for us, guys, if you're listening to this. Some other time of the year. Anthony's still in his scary movie phase. And he didn't really have a phase. It was just...
That's from the beer commercials.
Yeah, and then they...
from the 90s.
What you doing, chillin', killing? that movie's so dumb.
And then the mask changes every scene.
It's just like all over the place. Oh, man. So speaking of motions, guys, let's get right into it. Loki season 2. Not necessarily what I wouldn't call it like it's prestige TV, but for it being connected to this whole, superhero kind of thing, these comic book shows, it's I would say it's one of the better ones, especially coming off of the high that was season 1. So season 2 was something that was going to be really excited to see and to see where it went through afterwards, especially considering that there's all this big setup and how it had this like big plan on everything. So
especially that cliffhanger at the end of season 1.
Oh yeah, I like that whole cliffhanger in season 1 was nuts. But going right into it, there'll be some spoilers for season 2. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend watching it. Episodes are good. Overall, like very quick, non-spoilery recap. The show does not feel like a movie cut up into 6 parts. Every episode is appropriately timed that give you more of what's needed for these character arcs, the character growths, and to get up the final resolution. So it's pretty good stuff.
And if you like time travel things,
that's
true. Definitely up your alley.
There's a lot of timey-wimey, and it's like timey-wimey stuff with various different like alternate branches of timelines hopping back and forth. So it's pretty cool, pretty out of hand, but pretty cool once you figure it out. Like it's not like something it's going to take you an entire like I have to watch this twice to get it. It's not Tenet.
Straightforward. Yeah.
More than 2 times.
Because the first time you couldn't hear it.
Exactly.
But no, like overall, like the direction still feels like it feels this time it felt like more focused instead of just like kind of I think Anthony reminds me of like Lost in a sense that like there's a big mystery and you're still trying to figure out all the stuff of what's going on. Like season 2 felt a little more focused, if that makes any sense, because it's like everything
of this show
of Loki, not of Lost. Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm saying like season 1 felt more like that. Like, hey, there's this big mystery of what's going on. How can we solve this? What's going on here? And then season 2 is like, okay, that mystery we figured out, but how do we now solve a major problem? And it's kind of like it felt more focused, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. So they ended season 1 with a cliffhanger, and it was almost 2.5 years ago. And then it came back, and like, so how are they gonna resolve that? Because you're not entirely sure where he is when it ended. And then they kind of
get this twist.
They kind of resolve it like the beginning of the first episode. So I like that they didn't spend. I mean, granted, the whole first episode is kind of figuring out what he can do. But I just like that they didn't linger for the whole episode or multiple episodes on where he was at the end of the first season. They kind of like, this is what happened. He figures it out in the first like quarter of the episode. And then the rest of the episode is like setting up for the rest of the season. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed the first episode of season 2. It was just like, a good Marvel show again. Because I feel like we've had a a good amount of stumbles the past few years. So
with the exception of Ms. Marvel, I actually like Ms. Marvel.
yeah, Miss Marvel was fun.
And
Yeah.
It was better. Yeah,
Well,
WandaVision was the
WandaVision
first
was
show.
like the first show, and you're like, oh snap!
I'm saying like between Secret Invasion, She-Hulk, parts of other shows, it's just like oof. But yeah, it's just like night and day when you watch Secret Invasion because that was the most recent thing, and then Loki, like oh wow, it's stark difference.
I was gonna say
No
that
pun
maybe
intended.
That's why the viewership that we were talking about before maybe would have been low. Maybe because of how Secret Invasion was, maybe people weren't just that excited.
Well, it's
to
not
watch
just
it.
Secret Invasion. I think
just
it's
lately.
just the past
That
2 years
also,
of like so content because
Yeah.
I think we all liked WandaVision and probably a lot of the shows from that first year, but not everybody liked WandaVision. Not everybody liked Hawkeye. Hawkeye, I liked the majority of it, but I didn't like all of it.
Or Moon
Which I'll
Knight.
fight them.
Right, Moon Knight was also another one. It's like
I'll
it
fight
started
them for
off
Hawkeye,
good.
but-
Moon Knight started off cool, but then it was like, okay, where's it going? And by the end, you're like, oh, that's how it ended. It's kind of weird. So yeah, it's like they had a couple of shows like that where it's like they maybe started off great. I actually liked the beginning of She-Hulk, but then 9-episode show or like 8 episodes were like oof. For me, at least. I mean, you guys might have liked more of it. But
there are also people who didn't like the finale of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
the finale,
Yeah,
because that's
remember,
probably
it
one of
was
the better
rewritten.
episodes, though.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I also was kind of like rewritten or some other stuff.
Well, the whole show was rewritten.
Yeah.
The show was supposed to be about a pandemic that happened, and then and it was supposed to come out like right before the pandemic actually happened. They're like, oh, we gotta change this. That's why if you rewatch that show, that's why it's like clearly like 2 completely different storylines, and they kind of have to like mesh it together because they kind of have to make up like another secondary story.
Yep. But
yeah, it was,
and then there's also we can't forget about What If.
exactly.
What If is actually really good.
Season 2 is coming out soon.
Yep.
Not sure when. I don't think
They said by the end of the year.
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
this
that's
year.
surprising. I thought it was going to be next year.
So we have
It's holiday.
6 or 7 weeks left in the year. 7 or 8 weeks left.
It's wild that I bring that up, but I'll have to bring it up again later, considering what happens with this at the whole end of the season and how that fits into stuff. So that might be a little exciting. Who knows? But going back to the actual show itself, it was cool that we got to see more of our main characters and more supporting characters, and then new characters to come through to kind of give them more of some more range or some other foils for these for our main characters to work with. And it was cool because in season 2, because now Loki has this kind of main mission to basically save the TVA from breaking, but also like to stop himself from just like getting all jacked up in his own timeline. Like he it's almost like he puts on like a sort of like detective / spy role, which is cool if you've ever seen Tom Hiddleston in other stuff like The Night Manager, and like he's got the wit and the charm able to handle it on. It's just now like, hey, he's also the god of mischief. So it was cool seeing him interact more so with Mobius, especially like that second episode where they go to like that one timeline in like the 60s or 70s. They chase actor Brad Wolf, who was actually like X5, or I think it was, like his designation X5. And that was the whole thing too, that like, oh, these people there's a splinter group by that one general, and those people that want to go off and like break the branching timelines anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, well, how's that going to happen? And at the same time, the thing that's managing all the time is breaking. So it was like 2 major like problems. You had like a immediate problem, and then you had like the major problem happening later on. So I liked how that progressed further and further to get to that point, which brings us to probably like the best addition to the cast ever, which is Ouroboros.
OB?
Yeah, who's great. So
K-Wei
good.
Kwan is perfect. Like, just so matter of fact, like, just like, he's too cool.
I loved his explanations of things, and like just his like.
It's like, you can't do it. It's impossible.
What if you do this? Oh wait, it's not impossible.
But you did that was impossible. So do this that's also impossible. And it's possible.
And he's like, you do these 2 things, and yeah, it works, obviously. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, oh yeah, we hung out. It's like, that was centuries ago.
Yeah.
Like
It's like 400 years ago.
yeah, and it helps to understand it's like I guess like how the TVA is outside of time technically. So it's like all right, cool. No, nothing can progress further or go into like entropy. So that's why like no one ages and. That's why then we find out that like everybody's in the TBA was plucked out from their own timelines and kind of just like wiped clean to make sure that they keep things running. Which was everybody, including like Renslayer and Mobius, Hunter B-15, Casey. I mean, the ultimate power and collector of the Infinity Stones. That man just like had
with the paperweights.
Yeah, he had him like, we use him as paperweights. He's like, what?
He broke out of Alcatraz.
Yeah, that was cool to see that like by Loki trying to figure out, trying to find everybody and like reunite again because like the timeline in essence like broke at the end of episode 4. It ends up being a thing of like, okay, like what were their original lives? And then we saw the reason why Mobius likes Sea-Doo so much. He is a recreational craft salesman. That was
not the TVA, an ATV.
Yeah. I did not catch that initially the first time. I was like, oh wait, he went from selling ATVs to helping run the TVA. Too cool.
I think that was one of the more interesting episodes because we finally get to see where everyone had come from. And I think the Casey one was probably like the really out of left field one.
Yeah, he broke out of Alcatraz.
Everyone has like a relatively normal life. Mobius being just like a salesman, B-15 being a nurse, and then Casey's just a criminal.
But it's cool because you see like obviously like different lifestyles. Like he's a criminal in one universe, but or one timeline. But obviously he's just like a normal employee in this one.
Now was Loki jumping on the sacred timeline, or were they different timelines, like the branched ones that they were trying to fix?
Every time they went to somewhere else, it said branched timeline.
Okay, it was a branch.
Under it said branched timeline.
I don't think the season we ever got main timeline.
No, because everything's now a branched timeline.
Well, after season 1, the main timeline kind of cracked or broke apart, right? So he said, like, if you kill me, then the sacred timeline will start to go crazy.
And then there'll be so many more of me. Mm-hmm. In which case, see you soon because I'll just fix it again. And it's like, I just get and even there's we get another confrontation with He Who Remains again in the finale, which I didn't expect, but that was really cool.
I thought they were gonna go back there at that time, but like obviously after he's already dead,
stuff,
and like figure stuff out there. But I didn't expect like what we got, which was
but
really
before
cool.
we get to what we got, like it's just kind of explaining that like the whole idea of all of this was just like if it's like it's like in order to get kind of what you want or like what needs to be done, like there's a lot of like sacrifice or like something that that's something that's making difficult choices. We get that from a lot of the villains in general, like the really good villains is like making the difficult choices. Like even He Who Remains says it like, like how do you think I got here? Like I had to make difficult choices. And then we go back to Thanos. The man made difficult choices.
He's the only one with the will. To do it.
Well, now apparently he's not the only one to do what it takes because, we get through that with Loki. It's like I'm willing to, put myself out of existence to stop the time skipping. I'm willing to confront a variant of, this He Who Remains or just Kang. With the whole idea and the whole connection with Victor Timely, that was really cool too. And also, the willingness to do what needed to be done. Can we talk about Miss Minutes?
Psychopath.
Crazy Miss Minutes.
Dude,
she was unhinged.
Dude, that's
that smiling scene while they're all dying.
Everyone's getting squished, and then she's like, "Yeah, squish them more." I was like, "Jeez." This lady's crazy.
She's just like, let's like the eyes are just like it's gonna happen. Everybody's freaking out. And that's when like that whole Splinter faction that they captured, they're like, no, come join me. And they're like, you know what? No. And they're like, oh, okay. Then Renslayer and Ms. Minutes and Brad are just like, I guess it's gonna have to be time. And freaking Yeah, like, and then that's the whole thing too. That was episode when she squished them all. That was episode 4, right?
Yeah, it was 4.
Yeah. That was pretty out of hand. Like, just figuring out that, like, and then the whole idea is that was because at the end of episode 3, there was a whole, like, they're trying to recruit Victor Timely, but then they can't. And then he ends up going with, with Loki. And then that's where you have Renslayer and Miss Minutes just like, okay, we're going to go here now. But also, I'm going to teach you or explain to you what really happened. And then that's where it's just like, okay, I'm going to take over. So it's like, again, like you have this major plot of like, hey, this thing's going to break and destroy the TVA. But also you have people trying to like take over the TVA. So again, they're like these fun little problems that were happening in the midst of like the big problem. So, but it never felt like they weren't keeping track of anything, or it felt like, oh, we're just throwing stuff on the wall. Like it felt like everything
it led to something.
Yeah, it felt like everything had a plan. It felt that characters were able to still kind of grow and evolve, even when like, when Loki was pulling the variants back to be like, hey guys, we got to put this together to figure out what to do, and that's where we get this whole everything's kind of leading up to the fact that this Loki is in essence like. Figuring out like, hey, if my thing is to preserve the TVA, I have to, the greatest sacrifices require the strongest wills kind of thing, to where like that's where like the episode 4 cliffhanger, which then led into episode 5, which then was another crazy cliffhanger. You figure out like, hey, he figured out how to just jump within his own timeline.
Yeah,
which is pretty out of hand.
I mean, technically.
It's like, I was like, is it part science, part magic, part I just broke reality?
Well, the episode title is called Science / Fiction.
Yeah, which was cool because OB's like original thing was he was a physicist, but he was also a science fiction writer.
Right. Yeah.
And he's just like, no, I
and wrote the TVA.
Yeah, he's like, I wrote the book for the TVA, but so did Victor Timely, and it was like that whole bootstrap paradox.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was funny because even then, like in the final episode, he's just like, "Oh, I got to figure this out to break the thing." It's like, "Oh, just hey, you did this. You both wrote the TVA book. Congratulations, but we got to do this. Like, we got to go."
I like how he speeds through everything in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of like.
Which we're talking about the finale now. Yeah. Like, it ends up being like a similar like Groundhog Day thing where he's just like, "Hey, how do I figure out, how everything science and all this stuff works?" So he's just like, you're gonna need how long? He's like, how long? Decades? He's like, centuries. He's like, okay. They just Groundhog Day later. Yeah, he Groundhog Dayed it. Like, holy crap.
He's like, all right, you're gonna turn around, go down here, go downstairs, put this on. Remember, when you're out there, don't drop it.
Yeah. Or hey,
he gives him like all the different directions.
Hey, tape his helmet. Do all of this thing. Like, do this right. Do not drop. Don't put it down. Now grab it. Like, to put on the gangway. Do all this part. And like, it's almost like you did all the trial and error. It's almost like Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah. Again, it's Groundhog Day. Like, it's basically Groundhog Day. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. That's the outcome. So I have to do it over again. So like, you're reliving the same moment, but since now you exist out of time. Now you kind of understand kind of that whole like He Remains and Kang the Conqueror thing, because like he has, like when you have that mastery over understanding your own timeline and stuff, and then you could use science to then hop into other timelines and stuff. Yeah, you can be pretty OP. And it was even wild because then it's like he's like, oh, how many times have we had this? Like they get to that final point, just like how many times we had this conversation, or where she kills me. It's just like he's like you just stop her at any time. You're like, why the hell are you doing this, dude? Like it's just like.
Well, he said he'll always be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. I just gotta it'll be a way to just reset me to keep all of this going. Like that was the whole idea.
He's like, how's that time slipping going?
Yeah, and he's like, what do you mean? He's just like, oh yeah, come on, you think you're the only person who did this? Like, he's like, I was the pioneer. I did it. It was me the whole time. And then he's just like, wait, what makes you think we've had this conversation the first time? He's like, oh, okay, And like even the whole thing, like he stops, like instead of He Remains like using the tech to stop Sylvie, like Loki's like, wait, I'll use my time slipping / magic, just nope. And then do that whole thing too. He's like, oh, okay, we can have a real conversation now. Yeah. Yeah, like that was pretty dope. And like even when it's just like all the different times of resetting, that's like almost like he's going through the agony of just like I don't know what else to do right now. So but then he doesn't give up, which is pretty cool. For him being the villain.
What's crazy is
determination.
centuries of doing this, and he was still like
He got
ready
it
to
wrong.
go. Like he wasn't like dead tired or like just
he wasn't like I'm done, like
done with life.
No, he's just like something needs to be done. There has to be a way. Like that's kind of very thematic of it. It's just like everybody saying no, there has to be a way, or like there has to be a way to improve. I remember saying like, can there be a better way than just like letting it all just implode or only having the one thing? It's like, okay, well, and then even Sylvie says like, oh, who are you to dictate who can and can't live? It's like, I guess I'm gonna have to, like, it's almost like in a way it's like it's not like I get to pick and choose, like, oh, it's a burden that I'll have to keep responsible to keep
burden
all
with
the
glorious
purpose of being the custodian of the multiverse. Holy crap, that was the nerdiest sentence I've said all day.
Those visuals though, spot on.
Yeah, and like
so
the
like pulling on the suits.
Yeah, pulling on all the
suit was super cool.
Yeah, like the horns looked. They looked less cheesy than they did like in the original Thor movies, or like in I remember Thor Ragnarok is like, make a statue of me with the big bendy horns. Matt Damon, but
yeah, I really liked how just like him collecting and pulling the threads started to just like combine with him, and then it was like part of his cloak or cape that he had on, and it just looked like as he was walking or going up the steps that he created or whatever, that it was like the cape would just turn into the threads, and so it was just like everything, all the threads behind him as he's like collecting it. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it's a great visual, and even they're talking about like, oh, you want the chair, you want this stuff, just like, I don't want the chair. It's like I need to, like, it's almost, it's like,
and by that point when he takes it, it's like the most broken down crappy chair, so it's not like, oh, I'm the king of this throne. It's just like, I'll sit on this whatever chair just to do what I need to do.
Yep. Exactly. And it's just like, and it's wild because in the end, like, He Who Remains, or Kang, whatever, like, he actually like did the thing he wanted. Like, he actually did the thing that He Who Remains wanted him to do, which is like, I need you to take over. And like he took over, like, being the custodian, but instead of just of the sacred timeline, he's the custodian of like all the timelines. So it's almost like more. So that's actually pretty cool. Like it's a really cool way that in the end it's like it's just kind of like all come full circle, if that makes any sense, especially with the idea of the new character Ouroboros is basically like the whole, that's about the snake eating its own tail kind of thing, which also makes sense because it's like thematically, like, he gave the idea to Ouroboros to do the thing, but then Ouroboros is supposed to,
that loop.
Yeah, it's that whole same loop again. So it's like, oh, there's fun little loops and everything going on. So it's pretty cool. I like the whole thing. Yeah, like I even though like it's all about loops, he's like, there's the way like Loki creates his own new thing and kind of breaks the loop by being a new temporal loom and just like keeping track of the multiverse.
And we were just talking about this earlier before we recorded that speaking of loops, that both the first episode of the show and the last episode of the show have the same title.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
They're both Glorious Purpose.
And you can see the change from him in the first first episode to then obviously now, like, totally different person.
Yep. Like, and even now, like, and with like the character where the characters are in the end, it's like, Mobius is just gets to like hang tight just in the timeline now and just kind of like maybe, just keep an eye out on just what is on the outside of stuff. Yeah.
Sylvie maybe will probably
no, man, she's hanging out that McDonald's. Hell yeah, like that old like 80s McDonald's is perfect. I mentioned this before that the town where she is working at that McDonald's is actually the town like in the comics that Asgard like moved into. It was called like the
New Asgard.
New Asgard in the MCU. It was in Oklahoma, and in the MCU, New Asgard's in Tonsberry, Norway, but in the comics, it was Broxton, Oklahoma. And so when you go to where she is, like, she's in Broxton, Oklahoma. So I was like, yo, that's dope. I thought it's pretty dope. I was like, damn, this is badass. But like, there are also some little smaller nods to stuff too. Like, there's we're getting really nerdy into the Marvel stuff here. The Brad Wolf's like red carpet premiere thing, there was a picture of Kingo. I don't know which generation of Kingo, but there was a movie poster of one of Kingo's movies from Eternals. Kumail and Johnny's character.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a poster there. I was like, oh snap, that's pretty freaking cool.
What's the movie that he was starring in?
Brad Wolf.
Yeah, it was like Wolf something, right?
Yeah,
it was a wolf movie, like a werewolf movie.
It was not. Was it Wolf by Night? No.
Wolf by
That would have
Night.
been funny. I was like, oh snap.
Well, no, because it was either the second to last episode or 2 episodes ago. At the end of the credits, there was no end credits scene, but there was like a sound clip of like, I guess, an arcade of that movie, and then like his voice comes up from that game. And I don't know if you guys listened to that after the episode.
No, I didn't. I saw that there was one.
Oh.
But no.
But yeah, I got a chuckle when I saw that.
Wait, what? Hold on.
Yeah, you didn't hear that part?
Wait, the arcade sound where?
I think it might have been the end of last
4
week's
or
episode.
5?
Yeah, it was 4 or 5. So usually where they would insert a like end of credit scene, there wasn't a scene, but it was like a sound clip. And it was like a sound clip of his voice, like of the character from that werewolf movie. But I guess it was like a arcade game of that movie.
Like an 8-bit version of it?
No, but it was like him saying like, I don't know what he said. I don't remember what he said. It was like, come play my game or something like that, where he didn't say come play my game. But it was like a sound clip of him from the video game. And I was just like, what a random clip to play at the end of this episode.
Man, I don't remember. That was before the credits rolled?
No, it was after.
It was after.
Yeah.
Like
after.
while it's showing the whole Loki, like the...
Yeah, like way after. Like where they normally would have put an end credit scene on the show, it was just like a sound clip. An end credit sound clip.
Wow.
It's episode 4.
Okay. So.
Because remember when like the loom breaks and it's just like, oh, like
Dead
the whole
silence
timeline, everything's
and-
dead. Yeah, it's like dead silence, but not really. It was that stuff. Yeah, that's pretty
I
wild.
completely glazed
Yeah.
over that.
Oh, you guys got to rewatch it now.
Yep. Yeah, dude. Like it was just there was a lot of just like
This is one of the
Fun
few
stuff.
shows that when a show ends, I like watch the whole credits because the visuals of the credits are cool and plus the music is really good. So I just like listening to the music.
Well,
yeah. Oh, we
speaking of the music,
music. Yeah, like Natalie Holt was awesome. Like she might have like
she won up.
I think she won
from
up
season
herself,
season
especially
one.
like the music in the finale was like on a whole different level. Like she just
those
like,
final
subtly
sequence.
let loose. Like there was a version of like of the main Loki theme, but like with like some trumpet stuff in the background, and then you had some other again like the passive strings. It was nuts.
Was it
man.
on another timeline?
It was very timely, Victor Timely, for sure. Thinking about Victor Timely joke, but I think we have to again go back to the broach the subject around Jonathan Majors, but I would say just like confining it to just his work in particular in the show. Episode 3 was a massive showcase for him. Like it's pretty wild just to see because he's like just killing it in the role of Victor Timely. Like we've seen already multiple versions of these, Kang the Conqueror variants, and then you have this version right here as Victor Timely, and it is just it's just like crazy to see that like he's sort of like a bumbling shy scientist, but also kind of a bit of a like a shy, not a, what would I say? Kind of like a con man in a sense, where he's just like selling off inventions. And there's like it's just they don't work yet because
They're all prototypes.
they're all prototypes. You invested in a prototype, and you're like, damn. Like it makes sense when homie's like, no, I don't have partners. That's because it's easier to scam people when it's just you. But it was cool seeing like these both the different parties of just like Ms. Minutes and Renslayer, and then Mobius and Loki, and even Sylvie on her own trying to like blend in with the Chicago World's Fair and the timeline to try to like confront him to bring him back to the TVA. I thought that was cool. It was again, and also again, like it was like one of the longer episodes, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, that was like 53 minutes.
Yeah, the finale's I think longer. Yeah, not I think I know. Yeah, it's definitely longer. It's the longest one, but Yeah, that episode was great because it's that whole showcase. They're going back in time, and you're bringing in a whole new character. Although we supposed to think he's not a new character, and that's like where that scene at the end of the tag for like Doctor Strange came from. So it's cool to see that live and in action, and still getting this whole like plot to get Victor Timely back in, from there. And that's where we started seeing the kind of craziness of Ms. Minutes. There's just enough to figure out, like, oh yeah, there's definitely more to Miss Minutes than before, and also, she was
getting jealous like throughout the episode of Renslayer.
Yeah, and she was even like, "Yeah, get the Renslayer out of here."
She put her face on a body.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was a cool little twist too. Oh, and she turned into a giant, ghost clock. You even see that there are newspapers in Chicago, like, watch out for the weird, creepy ghost clock. And you're like, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's me. So really freaky voice. Pretty dope though. I thought it was pretty badass.
So overall, for all of season 2, was there anything that you guys didn't like?
Didn't like.
It takes at first, there was like, oh man, we need more Sylvie because there's more of it going on. But she would always be there to, like, they used her effectively to always be a sort of like opposite of something that Loki would try to present, and then she would bring up like what you're asking is the complete opposite of, like, the whole idea of like, oh, by doing this, you're taking everybody's free will, free chance to do anything. So like, it was a good foil to like what his motivations were, and also, especially after like in episode 5 where he's kind of like time skipping to other places, she was there to kind of help him balance out. It's like, well, yeah, well, what do you really want in the end, dude? Like, what's the whole thing of all this for? It's like, I don't want to save my friends. You're like, oh, there you go. Like, and it was helping him realize that it'd be more than just I'm fixing the TVA because I'm freaking out and scared of this guy because that guy is like ultra powerful.
Yeah, I feel like the first couple episodes, she kind of was just being used to like show her at the end of the episodes, like, oh, they're doing this thing, and then she'll show up at the end, and then they're doing this thing in this episode, and then she shows up at the end. I kind of liked that she was more involved in the latter half, maybe like the last 3 episodes, because it was more like what Xavier was saying, like she was pretty much trying to get into Loki's head, like what is it that you're trying to accomplish here? Like, she still kept thinking like, oh, you still want this all for yourself, and he's like, no, I'm trying to do something else. Yeah, and I really enjoyed the inclusion of her character more in the latter half of the season, just because it just seemed like they gave her more to do than just to show up and complain, why are you doing this? And like in the first couple episodes. But yeah, I mean, overall, I really liked this season. I really liked season 1. The only other thing I didn't really like about this season was I felt like in the first episode they introduced a couple of new characters aside from OB, which he's top tier. They introduced all these like the hunters and all these other. They had like a whole circle of trust and of people in a TVA that we've never seen before.
They had like a war room.
And, yeah, it was like a war room, and then there was this whole faction of / army of who was it? Dox, or what was that lady's name? Dox, the lady from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
She had her whole side mission going on, and then that only lasted a few episodes. And her side mission was, let's just prune as many of these timelines as possible. And I felt like that all kind of was really rushed, and then them kind of showing or visualizing like, oh, what she's doing. They kept saying like, oh man, it's terrible. She's killing billions and billions of people because she's killing timelines or whatever. At least to me, it was just like I had no connection to whatever timeline she's killing, so it doesn't really matter. At least to me, the viewer. So like,
you don't get that impact.
Yeah, you're not. It's not like throughout the Loki show you've seen multiple, and not even hundreds. Like, let's just say at some point they show 20 different timelines, and you've got to know like a couple characters in each of these timelines, and then you see, oh, all those people have died. Like, you don't know any of that. You only know the main characters that they've shown in this show. So for them to be like kind of sad and crying like, oh, she's killing billions, it's like, okay, like, yeah, you're showing it, but I don't really you don't really feel much about that. And technically, it's like, so is she like doing more damage than Thanos? Than Thanos' snap, technically, because Thanos
all those timelines.
he only did that in, I guess, one timeline. Half of everybody in this one timeline. She's just destroying timelines left and right. So yeah, it's a little weird. And like I said, it got resolved by like the third episode when they got Victor Timely. They stopped her, and then the fourth one was that the one where Renslayer kills them after they like put him in jail.
Yes,
and that's when Miss Minutes shows the crazy eyes and then and her smiling
shrieking cube.
Right, so it's like, so they caught those people and then they killed them in the fourth episode or fifth episode, and it was like, but overall screen time that they had was like they did this
couple seconds.
Yeah, overall only a couple minutes of screen time with these brand new characters. When that's it, they're like done by episode 5. You're like, oh, okay, that's what they did, and it was just to show you, oh, this was the impact that they did. And I just felt like there wasn't that much of an impact, where at least in the finale or last couple episodes, like it was more of an impact of what was going on. You saw the spaghetti when everybody was like that. Watching that stuff happen to characters that we actually know about is like, oh man, it was almost like the dusting from Thanos' snap. It was like another version of that. So I felt like that was more impactful than a random looking at the TVA screen and the branches disappearing. It's like, So who else did or didn't like certain things in the season?
At first I was thinking also like something that I didn't. At first I kind of didn't like, because like I would have wanted to see more of Miss Minutes and more of Renslayer, but now that I think about it, I think since it's only 6 episodes, I feel like there's like that overarching big problem like I talked about earlier, but also every 2 episodes have to deal with like an immediate antagonist, which the first 2 episodes, the immediate antagonist was that splinter group of the TVA trying to like go back and do what they're supposed to do, which is prune the timelines. And then you have episodes 3 and 4, it's Ravonna and Miss Minutes as like the main antagonists, and then in episodes 5 and 6, it's like the whole existential crisis coming into play, time breaking, but also He Who Remains is still like the big overarching big bad. Which even at the end of this show in the finale, it's like, yeah, I'm still here. You're still gonna have to do something about it, and then that's where Loki literally takes things into his own hands, and he's like, decides to make the hard choice. And if he's so charged with protecting all the timelines, which they are not all sacred, then he, like Anthony said before, he put it together, sat in his burdensome golden chair with his cool golden horns, and basically made the new multiversal tree. I thought that was a really cool thing that's to tie into like the Norse myth. That also reminds me of
TVA guidebook.
Yeah, second edition. Yeah. I love that second edition. And then I know how Zach always loved bringing up that throwaway line in episode, or no, it's like a whole little mini sequence in the World's Fair where they look at a picture, it's like, oh, it's Thor and Balder.
Well, yeah, like the carvings of Odin, Thor, and Balder.
Yeah, he's like, Balder? No one even knows him. Like, I love how like butthurt he was about that.
Because that was like the first mention of Balder in the MCU. Because I honestly, I didn't even know if Balder was a character in the comics at all. And I looked it up after that episode. I'm like, okay, so I guess he's been in the comics for a few decades now. Because Balder is like the lesser known brother of Thor, at least in Marvel comics.
Wasn't like Daniel Craig supposed to play him?
There were always rumors of him being Balder, but like, I think what was really funny is that in Norse mythology, Loki is the one that accidentally or maybe unaccidentally kills Balder and then sets up the beginnings of Ragnarok and all that stuff. But that's a cool little nod to all that. That was dope. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. But yeah, I just at first I was like, yeah, I wish I would have seen more of them because those 2 characters are very interesting. But we got just enough to realize that Ravonna really was the second in command for He Who Remains. And then he's like, all right, Miss Minutes, time to blast their memories, wipe it clean, set up the timekeepers, and that's how you have it as the TVA. Again, everything kind of just like loops in one big circle, and it's crazy to think because at first it was confusing in the finale of He Who Remains saying, "Oh, it's like reincarnation. Just it's always going to come back to me somehow," and it's kind of true because he's making it be that way, not just for like his self-preservation, but also just the preservation of everything because he's technically there at the end of time. It's just like, all right, I'm just gonna like let it all loop around, and unless you do the thing I want you to do, which is help me take over for me, so I don't have to do this anymore. So, but then Loki kind of did, but then did it in his own way. So overall, yeah, I mean, if you want to go do a quick roundtable of like everything we thought was good, or not sorry, but actually just like overall, like it ended well. How you guys liked the ending and how it just told its own cool little encapsulated story.
I think it definitely has one of the better endings of a show we've gotten so far of the MCU.
True.
And to me, it feels like it's a very like isolated kind of story in a way, because
it's like isolated, but it also isn't.
Yeah,
that's why I think it's really cool.
But I just don't know how it will connect
to everything else.
With anything, everything or anything else.
Like it's isolated in its way where it's like just about Loki and the TVA and like this outside of time area.
Yeah. And now they're just there maybe tracking the Kang while keeping the timelines just alive. It's like, hey, let's see all these Kangs, all the He Who Remains variants to make sure they don't make those incursions, just break everything and just break all that stuff going on.
Like you would think obviously the next sort of part of the story would be when we get to like the Kang dynasty or something next with Kang. But in terms of like Loki's story, it seems kind of like all together in its own thing.
I just hope
all at once.
Speaking of everything, everywhere, all at once, I just hope we get more OB somehow, some way, shape, or form. There's all these wild rumors and stuff going on, but I don't know. We'll see. I think with getting Ke Huy Quan on the show, I think it was like already adding like some more prestige to the show, and I think there's more. Hopefully, there's more to it, but we'll see. But yeah, it's pretty much a really great show to watch. I think they're good with it being now all told in its own whole story and that whole loop. Watching seasons 1 and 2 now back to back, like all together all at once, I think will make perfect sense. Since the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2 just fit in so perfectly. It's not like look, time jump here later.
Yeah, it just takes place pretty much right where it left off.
Exactly. Yep. So, definitely give it the big old recommendation for everything. What do you guys think? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
100%. All right, good.
For all time.
Always. Damn, we did that naturally. Good job, Anthony. So, after this episode, Danny, what's up next?
Well, today we watched Loki, the finale, but tomorrow, in terms of recording, we're going to go watch the Marvels. So, next week, we most likely will talk about the Marvels.
Yeah, I'm hype. I'm hype in the sense of just more of Ms. Marvel. I think her show, we're talking about shows, like her show is really good. So hopefully we get more of her. I'm hearing a lot of good things that she's basically like
the best part of
the movie. Yeah, here's hoping that there's more to it than just Iman Vellani being extremely charming and really great as Kamala. But you got kind of a stacked cast there. So hopefully the movie is good. We have heard that it is the shortest Marvel movie.
Yes, it is.
It's actually the shortest runtime on the movie. So, but hey, that's good. That means you're gonna get in, have fun in the movie theater, get on out, and then look forward to what's next.
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping, everybody. Thank you so much again for tuning in. If you also enjoyed Loki or you thought Loki was the coolest thing, if you think Tom Hiddleston's like the best thing since sliced bread in the MCU or just in general and all his other stuff, reach out to us. We're here on Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter. I hate that name, by the way. X, formerly known as Twitter. It's so
Isn't
strange.
his kid's name X? Is that why he called it X?
It's because he thinks the letter X is cool.
Yeah, I think he named his kid X or something.
It begins with the letter X.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not just
It's
X.
not just X. It's like X and then that AE thing that the French use.
Xavier.
and then like 12.
No, whatever.
Cool.
It's some weird thing.
The whole point is the platform
Twix.
the platform formerly known as Twitter, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, and of course your podcast platform of choice. But when this episode drops, shoot us out your favorite thing that Tom Hiddleston's been in. That's not Loki related. Please say The Night Manager. Dude's good, man.
Warhorse.
What was the other movie with Guillermo del Toro that he did?
Crimson Peak?
Yes, Crimson Peak. That was also really good. Share us your favorite Tom Hiddleston project that's not in the MCU. But with that, folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
Later.